Buongiorno. Good morning, Tuesday morning, March 10th, 2020. It's your boy Big Rich with a little Wake and Bake episode, Mob Story, Season 2, straight from the button guys of the New York mafia.com, fresh off the presses. Let's get into a little business, gentlemen. You know the deal. You wipe your feet on the rug and you bless the atmosphere. Let's get right down to business. Karma's a bitch. Former New York DA Thomas Spota's crime family comes crumbling down. Written by MS. Again, www.thenewyorkmafia.com. Salute to the button guys. A new mafia case recently played out in New York, and it's one that many probably have never heard about. But this family might be one of the biggest in New York, with an Italian guy who heads an administration and says things that are very similar to many cases of organized crime we have read about over the years. The only difference is that this family was made up of upstanding purveyors of justice, which includes a district attorney, some of his staff, and many members of law enforcement. And they have been operating in the shadows for over 10 years as a part of the country's criminal intelligence unit. No joke. The head of this inner circle, as they call themselves, was none other than former Suffolk County, New York District Attorney Thomas Wimpy Soprano Spota, who was the top prosecutor in the country for 15 years, representing 1.5 million residents. In 2001, he was elected to his position on a platform of anti-corruption and proceeded and made it his business to target reputed members of organized crime, charging them with extortion, loan sharking, illegal gambling, and numerous other crimes. It seems that maybe Wimpy Soprano Spota and his crime family might have wanted to muscle in on the other reputed families in the area, such as the Lucchese and the Colombos, who only have an alleged membership of 200 or so combined, to take a bigger piece of the pie. As one witness said, the Spota crime family would destroy enemies financially, personally, and professionally, even going after a target's family. And what better way for them to do this than use their power to charge anyone with a vowel at the end of their name as being a member of organized crime, under the guise of protecting the public from these dangerous individuals, so that Spota and his criminal associates could continue their own criminal enterprise undetected. Spota even had an underboss by the name of Christopher Baldy McPatty McPartland, many capos, including the powerful James Beat the Meat Burke, who Spota thought as of a son, and several criminal associates. They were riding a power wave until an unfortunate incident happened in 2012, causing a spotlight to shine on these cockroaches, forcing them to scurry out of the shadows. At the time, the sexual deviant Beat the Meat Burke was the county's police chief and a former investigator in the racket squad. One day in December of that year, someone broke into his department-issued SUV and stole an item from the front seat of his vehicle. The items turned out to be a duffel bag filled with dirty little secrets that included sex toys, pornographic DVDs, and even Viagra. Beat the Meat went off the deep end that his sexual perversions had been exposed. So when they caught a suspect later that morning, Burke had a lot of pent-up anger from not being able to get his morning beating the meat routine started like he usually did. So, to relieve himself and to work out some of that anger, he was going to be sure to make a point to whoever violated him that you don't fuck with the cops, especially cops in the inner circle who had dirty secrets hidden in their car. And his rage shouldn't have been a surprise to his criminal associates, because in a 2014 Vice.com article, Burke was described by those who knew him as a sex-obsessed narcissist who was a squat, sharp-talking middle-aged bachelor with a vulgar disregard for social niceties. Burke's criminal associates arrested Christopher Loeb. A drug addict with a criminal record who ended up being handcuffed in an interrogation room, where Burke proceeded to push him to the floor, violently beat him, and called him derogatory names. All while Burke's associates watched with glee, perhaps wishing they could take the place of Loeb. But that special beating wasn't the only thing Loeb endured from the sexually frustrated Burke and the rest of his criminal friends. Loeb was given a $500,000 bail a ridiculously high amount for such a minor crime. Plus, Loeb's case was assigned to Spota's top aide, Baldy McPatty McPartland, who wanted to make sure Loeb would pay the price for his actions. Now, just a side note here. Burke used to tell people that he wanted to become a cop so he can get away with breaking the law, unquote. A high school acquaintance of James Burke via Vice.com. So this guy already had plans when he was young. I'm going to be a cop, but I'm going to be a dirty one. You know, it is what it is. However, Loeb wasn't going to sit quietly, but he also didn't think anyone would believe him, especially after McPartland said that his word against the word of law enforcement would die in the wind, and he would be mocked by everyone who heard his imaginary story. Still, Loeb decided to make a leap and publicly accused Burke and the police of assault. Surprisingly, his accusations were taken seriously and the investigation began. So, Spota and McPartland kicked their warped sense of justice into high gear and got even nastier to those around them. According to prosecutors, while Spota and McPartland were being investigated, they pressured witnesses to refuse to cooperate with investigators, lie under oath, and withhold relevant information from the FBI. As family capo turned informant, former police lieutenant James Jimmy Licky the Balls Hickey, these fucking names are great. As family capo turned informant, first of all, a desgraciad, former police lieutenant James Jimmy Licky the Balls Hickey said, if you cross Tom Spota, Chris McPartland, Jimmy Burke, you have made sworn enemies of the three most powerful men in Suffolk County. In fact, McPartland told Hickey that if he didn't do what he said, he'd tell Hickey's wife about his extramarital affairs. Family associate turned informant, former police officer Anthony Lito, desgraciad, was also being threatened. In fact, everybody in this article gets a desgraciad. In court testimony, Lito said he was afraid to tell the truth because he thought the police, for which he worked for no less, would falsely accuse his sons of a crime or plan drugs on them. Think about the last part for a minute. Let it sink in. If a fellow police officer was deathly afraid that his fellow officers would plan drugs on his sons and falsely accuse them of a crime, Lito must have known it was something being done on a regular basis. So think how many innocent citizens have been convicted of crimes because these kinds of actions by these supposed protectors of people. They're a disgrace. While the investigation continued, Spota and top members of his administration started speculating on who the rats were who might be cooperating with authorities. Hickey told Spota that maybe cooperators have been scooped up or kidnapped, something law enforcement did to flip members of a criminal organization where a potential witness is approached discreetly and persuaded to be interviewed by federal officials. But Spota didn't think that was the case. And here's a picture really quick of James Jimmy Licky the Balls Hickey. Jimmy Licky the Balls Hickey. What a loser. But Spota didn't think that was the case. The feds don't do that, he said. The feds show up at your house at 6 in the morning. They show up at your job and they try to embarrass you. They're bad people. Spota also gave Hickey a message to deliver to other members of the criminal organization. Remind those guys, Spota said, what happens to guys who go against the administration. It's interesting that a member of law enforcement would feel the need to threaten potential rats. Not only that, you need to ask yourself why a member of law enforcement would call confidential informants rats in the first place. Because if Spota wasn't running an organized crime family, why use the term he and other law enforcement officials always claim reputed Italian organized crime families use? Only true crime families use the term rats, according to law enforcement. But no matter how hard Spota and his team members tried to apply the pressure, his crime family is crumbling, and fast. Beat the Meat Burke was the first to go down. In 2015, he was indicted and arrested on conspiracy to obstruct justice and violating Loeb's civil rights. In February 2016, he pled guilty and was sentenced to a measly 46 months in November of that year. He finished his sentence in November of 2018 and is now free as a bird. Maybe he received a lighter sentence because he wasn't Italian. Who knows? But be sure that if he was, he would have gone a lot more than 46 months behind bars. One additional note to share about Burke's time behind bars is that during a routine sweep of his cell, prison officials found Oxycontin taped under his bed. Was it planted or was Beat the Meat trying to find some other way to pass the time since he didn't have his duffel bag of toys? McPartland was indicted in October of 2017 along with Spota. Both were charged with conspiracy, obstruction of justice, witnessing tampering, and acting as accessories to the deprivation of the civil rights of Christopher Loeb. In December of 2019, they were convicted on all counts. They both face up to 20 years in prison. Their sentencing is set for April 30th. But the story isn't over yet. On March 9, 2020, Newsday reported an exclusive story that Suffolk County is suing Spota and McPartland to recover salary, bonuses, and benefits to the tune of $630,000. Let me say that again, and I was going to say that. $630,000, which these two felons received while being investigated before they each resigned. And let's not forget that all of the $630,000 was paid for by taxpayers' dollars. Huh? It sort of sounds like embezzlement, doesn't it? So maybe more charges should be filed against Spota, McPartland, and whoever gave them all that money while they were being investigated, because it doesn't make any sense that anyone would be paid while they're being investigated for crimes, especially when they hold a public office. Why not just withhold their money until the case is resolved? That would seem to be the most logical solution. Something else that should be noted is that Spota is good friends with Rudy Giuliani, another upstanding purveyor of justice who has more skeletons in his closet than Donald Trump has friends. Now, we want to make it clear that not all prosecutors and members of law enforcement are corrupt, but there seems to be a lot of bad apples in the barrel than there should be. And more it's becoming quite clear that many high and mighty prosecutors and law enforcement officials trying to save the public from dangerous Italian men of organized crime are hypocritical bastards with an unsatiated need to flaunt their power, all the while committing crimes and running their own organized crime families in the shadows. It also makes you wonder what kinds of tactics these purveyors of justice use to secure their convictions against their organized crime targets, and whether or not that there was some shady shit happening there as well, and how many other purveyors of justice throughout the country are using the same shady tactics to save the public from dangerous men. If law enforcement can push their brand of justice on a Christopher Loeb despite what he did, who's to say you or I won't be a corrupt law enforcement's next victim? And remember to think again about what Lito said. If a cop says other cops plan drugs on people or falsely accuse them of crimes, who's to say they won't try to do that just because they can? It's more than a scary thought. So beware of the great purveyors of justice, and watch out if you get pulled over or pissed off your next door neighbor who might have a friend in the office, because these criminals just might sting you if you get in their way. On a final note, if you think the Spota crime family is the only crime family ever to take over Suffolk County's public offices, you're sadly mistaken. There were two other guys named James M. Catterson Jr. and William Kahn, who were both district attorneys, and at least one source says that Suffolk County is so corrupt it tips the scale and involves allegations of illegal wiretapping, cover-ups, sex addiction, drunk driving cops, and blackmail. But we'll save that story for another day. First of all, incredible article. Salute to MS. Salute to the button guys at the NewYorkMafia.com. Again, former New York DA Thomas Spota's crime family comes crumbling down. I never even knew these people existed. This is the beauty of these articles, because we all learn. Big Rich, Mob Story Season 2. You already know, gentlemen, like, share, comment the video. Let me know what you're smoking on. Leave it in the comment section. Salute, and we will talk soon.